In this video, I will show you how to recreate this Barbie 3D Pink Gloss Text effect in Photoshop. You can purchase this template from my Creative Market store, and it comes with different background presets. It comes with this stripe overlay to create this kind of candy look, different cloud overlays and sky options. So if you don't want to customize it yourself, you can purchase it here, but I will show you how to recreate this effect on your own. So here is how to do it. Open your Photoshop file and I will create a new canvas with these dimensions: 4000 by 3000 pixels, 300 pixels per inch and RGB color mode. Click OK. Now the first thing is I want to create some kind of a pink background. So I will create a new layer and fill it with anything. It can be white color, so just hit Shift F5 and fill it with white. Then I will double click this layer, open my layer style window and click on color overlay. Here I'm using a slightly pink, like soft pink color for my background. So I will click here and change the color to FFD 5EF. You can choose, of course, any color that you want. I will click OK, and this is my background now. Now the most important part is, of course, to create our text layer. This effect is completely editable, so you can change the fonts, the sizes, you can type anything you want, and it will automatically update this effect to your text. So I will select my text tool here and create one big text frame across my canvas and type something like, let's say, pink. The color that I'm using is this one, FFC 6E9. I will click OK, and the font that I'm using is Berkshire Swash. Now I'm using the size of approximately 230 pixels, and I like to keep my text slightly condensed, so I'm using tracking of -40. Now I want to centralize this text on my canvas. Let's say put it somewhere like here. And the next thing, very important step, is to create a rectangle behind my text that basically fits this canvas size. So I will make a rectangle that will have the size of my canvas. So I will just stretch it to fill my canvas, and I will place this rectangle behind my text layer. It doesn't matter which color it has, it is just for the following purposes. Now I will select my rectangle and my text, so hold Shift and select both of these items. Right-click, convert to Smart Object. I will call this text layer, then double-click here to open my Smart Object, and then I can just simply delete my rectangle and leave only my text layer here, but with keeping basically this size of the canvas within my Smart Object. The reason for this is that simply I want to be able to add more text layers, maybe even some other graphics, to increase, decrease the size, but to keep the canvas size so that it does not adjust only to my text that I'm currently editing. I will hit Save and exit this Smart Object. And now we can start applying our effect and layering our text layers. So now the first thing I want to do is double click my Smart Object here to open the layer style window, click on bevel and emboss and apply the following effect. So I have to first really not just check bevel and emboss, but also click on this to open the settings. And the settings I'm using are the following: outer bevel, technique will be chisel hard, depth 245, direction down, size 5, soften 3 pixels. Shading I will leave as it is with using global light settings, and contour will be cone. So I will use the second one, which is the cone one. Screen white set to 35%, and the second one, the shadow mode, also I will set to screen, and I will again use white instead of black color and set the opacity to something low like 5. Now you can play with these settings, of course, and experiment to get different results, but these are the settings that I used. The next thing I want to do on this layer is to check drop shadow effect. Click on it to change the settings. So I will set the blend mode to normal, and the color, I won't use the black one, but I will use a little bit darker pink. So this is the code that I'm using, F01EA6, and I will click on OK. Opacity set to 100%, angle 120 with using global light, distance 20, spread 100 and size 30. So this gives us this kind of sharp shadow, sharp pink shadow around the text. Contour I will leave to linear and hit OK. Now important step as well is while we are still in this smart object layer, I want to set the fill to 0%. So set it to 0 and now we can start duplicating our smart object layers. So I will click on Ctrl J to duplicate this layer and double click on it again to change these settings. So I will first uncheck this drop shadow and I will only apply bevel and emboss to this layer. The settings will be outer bevel, technique will be smooth this time, depth would be 1000, direction down, size 25 and soften 0. Now the shading, I will uncheck the global light and I will set the degree here to 115 and the altitude I will set to 0. Contours I will use a different one this time, and if you don't see all these contours you can just click on the gears icon here, click on contours and click on append. This will add the contours to your list. So for this one I will be using peaks. Here highlight mode screen, white and opacity of 75, and shadow mode would be multiply, color black and the opacity something like 10. Click on OK and now we can duplicate this layer again. Double click on it and I want to uncheck bevel and emboss and click on drop shadow. So drop shadow I will be using screen, color would be white, opacity I will set to 40 and I will use the global light settings, distance 7, spread 24 and size 8, contour I will use cone and click on OK. Again I will duplicate this once more, Ctrl J, double click on the layer and change the settings. I'm not using drop shadow on this one, I will be using outer glow, so click on outer glow, screen and the opacity 40, noise 0, and I will leave this color which is F5, F5, F5. Technique softer, spread something like 29 or 30 would do, size 10, and the contour I will set to cone. And I also want to change the range to 10 and the jitter to 40. Now I can click OK and duplicate this once again with Ctrl J. And again, double click on this, I will uncheck outer glow, and on this one I want to use bevel and emboss again. The settings would be outer bevel, chisel hard, I will use a depth like 195 maybe, down size 2 and soften 3. Angle I will use global light settings, and the contour I will use cone. Highlight mode would be multiply, I will use black color and the opacity of 15, and then again multiply black and 10. Click OK and now it will get interesting. Now it's actually where we will really get this kind of 3D glossy effect. So I will duplicate this layer once again, double click, bevel and emboss, I will use inner bevel this time, smooth, depth would be 100, direction up, size 35 and soften 16. I will leave the global light settings, and contour I will scroll down and find notched slope. You can experiment with these profiles and get really different and interesting results every time, so you can really customize this effect to your own preference. Highlight mode I will set to screen, color to white, and the opacity set to 80. And multiply black and set something to 10 or 12 and hit OK. Then actually we are not done. I will double click this layer again because I forgot to add one more effect, which is drop shadow. So if I click on drop shadow here, I will use blend mode, color burn, and I will set the color to black, opacity set to 25, leave the global light settings. Distance would be 15, spread 60 and size 20, and the contour linear. Hit OK. And now I want to set this fill of this layer that we just edited to 100%. So I will set it to 100. Then I can also duplicate this layer again. Of this newer layer that I've just duplicated, I will set the fill to 0%, back to 0, and now double click on it. And I want to click on bevel and emboss again and change the settings. Inner bevel, smooth, depth 300, direction up. Size would be, I think we can set this to 30 and soften to 0. Leave the global light settings. Screen white, something like 30 or 32 would do. Multiply black, something very low like 2. And set this to OK. And the last thing we want to do as well is to duplicate this layer one more time. Ctrl J, leave the fill to 0 as it is. And again, double click on it, bevel and emboss, inner bevel and smooth, depth, put it back to something like 993 or something similar. Direction up, size 46, soften 5, leave the global light settings, set the contour to peaks. And then we have screen white, opacity 25, and the multiply set to black and 2. You can also increase, depends how much glossy you want this effect to be. You can increase this highlight mode to something like, let's say 50 or less or more. And you can always like play with these values. For example, you can check which values control which part of the effect. So for example, this layer right here, if we double click on it, I can just go to bevel and emboss and just reduce this opacity a little bit to give it a little bit less of these dark edges. You can just customize these numbers really to create the effect that you want. And that's it. I hope you like this video. As I said, if you don't want to customize and to make this effect on your own, you can purchase it online, where you get also different cloud presets and the stripe presets and backgrounds and font recommendations, or you can just use this tutorial and create your own kind of 3D Barbie text effect look. Thanks for watching, and if you like the video, don't forget to like, comment or subscribe.